I am already, I muted myself, but, okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. If you need me, just turn me on.
Good to go, Lisa? Okay. All right. I have 6:31. Mayor Tome here to call to order the meeting of the Columbus Common Council for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. Again, before we call the roll, I'll just remind you that we're still utilizing Zoom conferences for our meetings here, so I apologize for any inconvenience and appreciate your patience. This evening we have Administrator Ellefson here, as well as Clerk Pat Gable in the chambers, as well as all council members, Ian, except for Ian Gray, who is joining us via Zoom conference this evening. Also wanted to congratulate Alder Ian Gray on his re-election as District 1 representative, and welcome our newly elected alders, Paul Piperone from District 2 and Alder Mike McCabe from District 3. Welcome. I look forward to working with all of you. So thanks for serving with us. And just a reminder, I'll ask all body members to please identify themselves, especially if they're participating via Zoom, even in person, just for clarification for anybody that's following the meeting, streaming or online, so they know who's speaking. And I'll try to be careful watching the monitor to see who's looking to speak, because I don't have a monitor next to me on the EOS this evening. So thank you. With that, Pat, could you please take a roll call for us?
Gray.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
McCabe.
Here.
Piperone.
Here.
Reed. Here. Ryan.
Here.
Tome.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, Pat. If able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. The next item then is to approve the agenda for the evening. We have a fairly small agenda. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda's approved. Thank you. Move on to correspondence and communications. Again, as a reminder, due to the COVID-19 health crisis, we are trying to minimize attendance at the City Council meetings in City Hall per Governor Evers' directive. Citizens wishing to make public comment at the meeting can call the number that was provided on the agenda. We ask that people try to call in a little bit earlier so we can get you queued up. All comments are to be limited to 3 minutes in length, if possible. Is there anyone that's in queue right now for citizen comment? Eric is signifying, shaking his head no. Did I see JD on there earlier? He's got it muted. JD, were you signed up first? Did you want to make a citizen comment, or were you just watching the meeting? Not getting a response from JD. Is there anyone else present that wish to make a comment under citizen comment this evening? I see no one. All right. We'll move on to the consent agenda then. Consent agenda, this evening we have the council and committee of the whole meeting minutes for 4/7/20. That's the only item on the consent agenda, unless there's any edits to the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the council or consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Ed Johnson will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on that? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. We move on to new business item number 1 then, which is to take nominations and elect a city council president. This is a requirement of many governing bodies for this meeting in April, the second meeting in April by statute and ordinance. We need to elect a city council president. Having served as city council president previously, there are many different ways that we can do this, but I think the most appropriate way to start the process is to open the floor to the council to take any nominations for city council president. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Mayor,
Alder Johnson.
I would nominate Katie Ryan for council president.
Have a nomination for Katie Ryan. Katie, are you willing to accept the nomination?
I would be willing to accept the nomination.
Are there any other nominations for city council president? I see none. So we have one nomination for Katie Ryan. What I would do is ask the council to make a motion in a second to elect Katie Ryan as the next city council president, and we will take a roll call vote on that.
Alder Johnson would make a motion that we, by acclamation, have Katie Ryan, elect Katie Ryan as council president.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to elect Katie Ryan as the city council president. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, can we please take a roll call vote, Pat?
Gray,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Piperone, Reed,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Congratulations, Katie.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ed. I will certainly try to serve as best as possible. It'll be brand new to me, but I look forward to serving as council president. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. After working with you for the last year, I think you're going to do a fantastic job. I'm here to help you anytime you need it, so thanks for stepping up. All right, we'll move on to new business item number 2 then, which is consider and take action on mayoral appointments of alderpersons to the city boards, committees, and commissions. I did get a list into the printed packet just to have something in the packet. This list was brought out to share with the council at our orientation meeting last Friday night, just to get any feedback from council members on what I had laid out. We did discuss just briefly that there is no need for a appointment to the Columbia County Comprehensive Plan Committee, so that can be struck from the list that was submitted. That's not needed at this time. I did discuss with Administrator Kyle Ellefson about appointing him to the Columbus Area EMS Group, which he's fine with, and I'll be serving as the alternate, and also Administrator Ellefson will be appointed to the Columbia County Economic Development Corporation Board. One addition to the list that was not on here when I submitted it last week was the Ordinance Review Ad Hoc Committee, which was created last year. We will need a replacement for Alder Ed Johnson, and Paul Piperone has indicated that he would be interested in serving on that ad hoc committee. Is that correct, Paul?
Paul Piperone, yes.
Okay, thank you. So that would be an addition there, and also Alder McCabe did talk to me at the meeting last Friday and expressed interest in serving on the CDA. Is that correct, Mike?
That is correct.
Paul, would you have any issues with me replacing Mr. McCabe on the CDA? I'd originally put you on the list, but
Paul Piperone says, great.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. All right, with those edits then, is there any other discussion or comments on the list of mayoral appointments? If there are none, I would ask for a motion for approval of the mayoral appointments.
I'll make a motion to approve the mayoral appointments as stated.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the mayoral appointments submitted of alderpersons to the city boards, committees, and commissions. Is there any discussion on the motion? If none, can we take a voice vote on that, Pat, do you think? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you again to all the alders for your service and for serving on these boards, committees, and commissions. I know things are kind of shut down right now, but we will begin to open up these meetings as much as possible in the near future once we implement Zoom technology into the other boards and committees as well. So thanks again. All right, we're going to move on to new business item number 3, which is Resolution 7-20, resolution providing for the sale of approximately $1,135,000 for the sewage system revenue bonds, Series 2028. This was presented at our last committee of the whole meeting for a review. Greg Johnson from Ellers presented that. We have a different representative from Ellers tonight if there are any questions, I believe. I still see him. Brian Raymer is available via Zoom if there are questions from the council. I guess as a brief overview, I'll just inform the new council members that this is essentially the first step, adopting this resolution to begin the timeline for bonding for this project that is outlined in the packet in the schedule there. We will be looking at the due diligence call to review the official statement in May 4th, and that will keep moving forward through the various stages until the closing date of June 11th. As far as the bigger picture of the product or the project that this is funding for the wastewater treatment plant, this is for it's called the Huber Screen Project, which is essentially the inlet into the wastewater treatment plant where everything is delivered there. This is upgrading that screening process to an automated process, which is much safer for the wastewater workers. And this screening is actually a finer screen than we have right now, which is going to increase the production at the wastewater treatment facility. So this is a project that has been discussed, I'd say, for at least the last 5-6 years. It came in way above what we had expected the first time we went out for bid. But engineers and the wastewater staff have done some research, and they actually found a new product that's a bit more competitive that's brought the price down considerably for this project. So it's been long awaited. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them, or we can have Mr. Reamer answer any questions about the resolution. Are there any questions from the council? Okay. All right. If there are no questions from the council, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 7-20.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 7-20. Paul Piperone.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the approval of Resolution 7-20, resolution providing for the sale of approximately $1,135,000 for the sewage system revenue bond, Series 2028. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mike, did you have any questions? I did not. Okay, all right. If there are no questions, then could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Johnson,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank you. Move on to item number 4. This item was also reviewed at the prior committee of the whole meeting. This is a donation from Enerpac, a local manufacturing business who is donating playground structures for the Warner Street Park. Per our donation policy, they're looking for kind of a nod and a wink from the city that we're willing to accept this equipment that they would like to donate to the city. So they're looking for approval from the city council to accept that donation so they can actually go out and order it. I believe there's quite a lead time for them to order the equipment. In that time, then they'll be working with the city to work on a site plan of where it would be installed within the park, etc. So, any questions on this one? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the donation of the playground structures from Enerpac for the Warner Street Park.
I'll make a motion to accept the playground donation from Enerpac for Warner Park, as presented in our packets.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Reed, a second from Ian Gray, to accept the donation from Enerpac for the playground structures for the Warner Street Park. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, and thank you to Enerpac for the donation for our local park. On to item number 5, consider and take action to suspend the rules to consider agenda item number 6. As a brief explanation, if you've read your packet, this is not normal to have to suspend the rules, but obviously we don't have time to review this at the committee of the whole meeting and then make a recommendation to the next regular city council meeting. This is something that City Administrator Kyle has worked on with our deputy clerk. She did not run for city council, but she was a write-in candidate, so he did review the city employee handbook on direction, and it turns out the city council does need to agree to allow her to serve in that capacity. So if there's any questions, Kyle can certainly help you. Ed, did you have a question? All right, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Alder Johnson will make a motion that we suspend the rules and take up agenda item 6.
Second. Alder Gray, second.
All right, we have a motion from Johnson, a second from Gray to suspend the rules. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, the rules have been suspended. Then we can take action on item number 6 is to approve the city employee holding non-city public office per the section stated in the personnel handbook on our agenda.
I, Alder Gray, would move to approve Deputy Clerk Jane Foodie to hold the position of alderperson for the city of Juneau while retaining her position as Deputy Clerk for the city of Columbus.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Gray, second from Reed to approve the city employee holding a non-city public office per these employee personnel handbook stated in the agenda here. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. And congratulations to Deputy Clerk Jane Foodie. Okay. Next item then is to approve the city claims in the amount of $292,876.96. Are there any questions on the claims? If there are no questions on the claims, I'll entertain a motion to approve in the amount read.
Alder McCabe makes a motion to approve claims in the amount of $292,876.96.
Second.
Motion from McCabe, second by Ryan to approve the city claims in the amount listed on the agenda, $292,876.96. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, Pat, can you please take a roll call on that?
McCabe,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed, Ryan,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. It's a relatively light agenda for the evening. We'll move on to the report of city officers. If the council is all right with it, I'd like to turn the floor over to Alder Ed Johnson momentarily.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. I have an announcement, and that is at the end of the COW meeting, I'll be turning in a letter of resignation of my seat on the council. It is with deep sadness that I'm going to be resigning my seat as alderperson for District 3. I've accepted a position in Port Washington, Wisconsin, and my relocation there requires me to offer this resignation. I just want to say what an honor it was for me to serve. I really like doing this stuff. I really like public service and problem solving, which is what I view being on the council as doing, is working on solving problems. I find it interesting. I find it fascinating. It's a great group of people to work with. And I especially like working on constituent issues when they come up. I had a recent experience with a constituent who had a concern about the water levels in the Crawfish River and the Udi Dam and flooding concerns. And I talked with her, and then I talked with our Public Works Director, and this constituent then called me back and wrote me back and explained how I must have waved some magic wand and lowered the river levels. And I said, no, I don't have that much power, but I did speak with the Public Works Director, and he informed me that his staff has been much more proactive this year in monitoring the river levels and monitoring future rainfalls, et cetera. And also we got lucky with Mother Nature this year, but his staff had felt newly empowered with our new Public Works Director to do this type of thing. And I think that's a true reflection on how fortunate we are to have this Public Works Director, that the staff feels able to do this where they didn't necessarily before. And it also speaks to something I observed in my time on the council, and that is the quality of the department heads that we have in this city and the staff that we have. They are very, very hardworking and always put the work of Columbus at the head. I thought it was really exemplified when we had interviews for city administrators, and all department heads came in on a weekend on their time off and participated in the interview process. And to see, and some brought food and things like that. Some brought food to the Friday evening meet and greet that we had. But to see the enthusiasm of them and to see them participate the way they did and the way I've observed them over the past year, I just want the citizens of Columbus to know that they should be very proud of their department heads and their frontline workers. And it's been a distinct pleasure to serve on the council, and it is with a lot of regret that I leave, but I have to. So thank you for allowing me to ramble on. And with that, at the end of the COW meeting, I'll be submitting a formal letter of resignation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed Jepson.
Yes, thank you, Ed. All right, I'll turn it over to Administrator Kyle Ellison then.
Just a couple things to report out. One, I think most of you probably have already heard, but last week the governor extended his emergency order until May 26th. And so what that means for the city is that we're continuing to evaluate our operations. City Hall is, for the time being, going to stay closed to walk-in customers to make sure that we keep our customers and our staff both safer. Most departments are working as close as they can in a safe manner to full strength. There's been some alterations in Department of Public Works, Police Department, Fire Department, and just trying to make sure they continue their essential functions. But know that we're continuing to watch that, and as the bounce back criteria came out recently, I guess we're going to be evaluating that as well, and how we go through those phases and what that means for our operations. Also, reporting back on a previous agenda item, we did engage with Clifton Larson to provide us a CPA to work through Kim Manley's retirement transition and through the gap where she won't be here doing all the functions we need completed, and then through the recruitment. And Kim has been working closely with Joan Scholes, who is the CPA, and I think Joan is very highly qualified. The cost was a little higher than I had hoped for, but was in line with other competitive firms. And and so even though it is a little more, I think we'll make that back in the speed at which she comes up to speed. So hopefully we'll have a lot more to report as we move forward through that recruitment process. Also, the new street sweeper is here, and last week I think they started maybe at the end of the week doing some street sweeping, and they were working on that today. I hate to bring it up, but there was a minor setback today in that it did break down or stall out, but I think they're evaluating what went wrong, so should still be in the warranty period, but it's good to see that out there, and they're using it as one of those things that one person can do. And then also, the county has begun their work on opening up that culvert by the deer pen. So if you've been over that direction, you've probably seen lots of heavy equipment. And I was out there today with Zach. He was kind of showing me around the site. And they've got quite a bit of it exposed and removed in the water. It's being bypass pumped. But they're hoping to have that completed before the end of next week. So those are all kind of big projects and big things that it's good to see movement on, especially in this time when not much is happening. So that's what I have. So this is one of the capital projects that was undertaken in the Second Ward Creek to open up where it had run near the deer pen and near the pavilion, ran underground through a 20 or a 48-inch pipe, I guess it was. And so this opened it up to more of a natural state, and they'll be rip-wrapping it, and should give us a little bit less bottleneck and hopefully allow for less flooding.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, I have a few items for the evening. Again, as Kyle touched on, the City Finance Director, Kim Manley's last day of work with the city is going to be May 1st. She notified the city of her planned retirement late last year. She's retiring after 9 years of service. She started with the city April 25th of 2011. Just wanted to thank Kim for her service to the city of Columbus and hope that she enjoys her retirement. If you've been following the conversation here at the council level, you may already know, but voting is currently underway for the newly planned recreational area out on River Road. That will include the installation of a butterfly garden by our local Oddfellows organization. It's reported that the initial response has been very good so far, but please submit any ideas you have for a name for the site on the form provided on the city website by April 30th at 5 p.m. Wanted to thank Lisa Wolf and Matthew Schreiber for getting that posted to the city website in such a timely manner. That was a discussion we had at the last committee of the whole meeting. So that will be shared out on the city website and social media accounts. Also, many thanks again to City Clerk Pat Gable, Deputy Clerk Jane Foodie, all of the election workers, city staff and volunteers for the work that they put into planning a safe election amid a pandemic. The City of Columbus had a total number of 1,895 ballots cast. That is approximately 61% of registered voters, which is phenomenal. I think that there's usually about an expected 20% statewide average. As usual, Columbus is very engaged and they show up to vote. So of the 1,895 ballots, total number of absentees were 1,463. 437 of those were in person. So we had probably about 1,000 people doing mail-in early absentee, which is great. That's what we wanted. Total number of elections or election day registrations was 51 people. Again, it's just a great turnout. We have a total of 3,085 registered voters at this time in the city of Columbus. Every year, the Department of Administration releases estimates as to the eligible voters that we have in the city of Columbus. That number is 3,979 people that are eligible to vote. Obviously, there are probably college-age kids that may be voting in a different location, etc. So there's a lot that can be brought into that number. But again, a 61% turnout in the city for a spring election is just phenomenal. So thanks again, Pat, for everything you had to do. I know we had chaos up until the day before the election, and I heard a lot of good feedback from people in the community, about the election this year. So you did a great job. Thank you. Citizen appointments to city boards, committees, and commissions. As you saw tonight, made mayoral appointments for all the council members to various boards, committees, and commissions. This is something that happens every spring. This is another opportunity for citizens to consider participating in one of several city boards, committees, or commissions. The city is very fortunate to have many volunteers who devote their time by serving on these various committees. This is a great opportunity to contribute to your time and talents to your community, and also gain a better understanding of how local government works. While some boards are advisory only, for example, the CAAC, the Parks and Recreation Advisory, there are other committees that make recommendations directly to the City Council, and other commissions have more autonomy, such as the Water and Light Commission, Tourism Commission, and Cable Commission. I'll be meeting with city staff later this week to discuss the sign-up form for the city website and to work on some updates, and we'll be sharing that information as soon as it is updated. If you would like more information about serving on any committee or would like to find an opportunity that fits your interest, please feel free to visit the website to look at various boards and contact me with any questions. I'm happy to help anyone that's interested in serving. City residency is required for almost every appointment, just so you know. There are only a few exceptions for a few city boards, committees, and commissions. So look for updates on that on the city website. There's also been some photos recently shared on our city website and social media pages of the new Columbus Fire Squad being built right now by Marion Body Works of Marion, Wisconsin. The truck will carry extrication equipment with a wide variety of other rescue equipment. It is built to respond to any type of rescue call, including vehicle crashes. It will also respond to fires and has an air filling station to fill air bottles at fires. It will carry supplies to handle hazardous material spills. Also included is an area that will be used as a command post at major incidents. This purchase is a joint venture between the City of Columbus and the Columbus Area Rural Fire Group. This squad will replace the current rescue truck that was built in 1991. Again, I look forward to seeing the new squad in person when it's delivered to Columbus. Congratulations again to Council President Ryan. Look forward to serving with you. I think that you're going to do a wonderful job. Enjoyed working with you for the last year, but I think you're well suited for the position. So thanks for stepping up. Also, again, welcome to the new alders here this evening. And I guess in closing, I just wanted to thank Ed Johnson for his year on the City Council here. It's been a pleasure working with Ed. When I think about Ed, I think about the oath that we all take to serve in this capacity, city level, county level, school board level. Anybody takes an oath to serve, and that oath pretty much ends in, to the best of my ability. And I think Ed has really presented us with someone who's really tried very, very hard to show us the abilities he has, or he's done it without even trying. I guess the point is he's really raised the bar for me. I've learned a lot from Ed. I think just his desire to want to work on these type of things. Him and I have had a real connection over the last year of working together, and he's helped the city accomplish a lot in the last year in a very short time. So definitely going to be hard to replace an Ed Johnson, but I've learned a lot from you, and I want to thank you for everything that you've done in your short time here. Not just you, Ed, but also your wife, Liz. You've done a lot for the community. Liz has volunteered time with the farmers market last year and a lot of the downtown beautification efforts, so you'll definitely be missed in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. It's been my pleasure, and I urge people to step forward because it's a lot of fun. But I really appreciate your comments, and I'll be available to offer any help from afar that I can. Thank you.
All right. Unless there's anything else, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned for a few minutes, and we'll return with the committee of the whole. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for mentioning Liz and the work that she did. She also embraced the best of her ability.
Okay, thank you. I just heard a ding and then it got really quiet, so I thought maybe they cut me off and I'd have to call back in. So, thank you.
Out our names as much as possible as person. Keep the confusion to a minimum. Pat, could you take the roll?
Gray. Respond.
His lips moved.
Okay.
He's maybe muted.
Johnson.
Here.
McCabe.
Here.
Piperone.
Here.
Reed. Here. Ryan.
Here.
Tone.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. This meeting has been noticed by state statutes and local ordinances. If there are no amendments needed, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as it reads.
Mayor Tome will make a second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 4, citizen comments. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis, city staff need to minimize attendance at the council meeting in the hall chambers per Governor Evers' directive. Citizens wishing to make a comment at the meeting were asked to call number by 6:15 p.m. Lisa, are there is anybody in queue for citizen comment tonight? This time? No. Okay. Is there anybody present that wanted to make a comment tonight? Citizen comment? Hearing none, I'll move on to number 5, department reports.
Jake
sorry, Katie? Andy?
Yep, it's Andy.
All right, Andy, Traxler.
I wanted to congratulate Katie Ryan on becoming the City Council President. I know she's well qualified for the duties, and I am glad that the council made such a sound decision. I also want to say my goodbyes to Ed Johnson. You will be missed. You were a huge influence on myself, and as you heard earlier from the mayor, and I will miss you dearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. There's no further citizen comment. I'll move on to number 5, which is department reports. In tonight's packet, we have the police report, the treasurer's report, the media coordinator's report, the DPW report, the fire department report, all from March of 2020. Were there any comments or concerns or statements from council about any of the department reports?
Mayor Tome here, just wanted to make a comment to some of the newer members. These are just submitted as a written report, but there's not usually a need to have much discussion here. But again, I urge you to go through these and reach out to the department heads if you have questions about anything that they're doing in those departments. They definitely appreciate when aldermen contact them to ask more about their department and what they're doing. I think this is, we've upped the reporting a little bit in the last couple of years, so we're more informed on what each department is doing. But unless you're on a committee or commission or a board that's directly associated with that department, sometimes this is the only form of updates that you really are made aware of. So I would urge you to try to read these so you know what each department's doing, and if there's any reason you'd like to get a tour of the facility or learn more about it, they're always welcoming all the people to come in and learn more. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Trina?
Oh, not a concern at all, just a comment. I had noticed looking at the police department that it will likely be a while for us to receive the new cruisers due to COVID. Just put that out there.
That is unfortunate, yes. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to number 6. Consider and discuss finance director's job description. So hopefully everybody had time to kind of go and dive into the job description that was put together by city staff and kind of just go over everything in general. Was there anybody that wanted to start off with any questions or comments, suggestions? I had just a couple of interesting questions. One of the things I noticed is at the very back page, under tools and equipment used, I thought it was interesting just to bring up that an electric typewriter is listed there. So that was my question. Is that often used still? We have one? Okay. So, okay.
And the city administrator may have used it in the past 5 days or so. So it actually has a use. It's sometimes a challenge on forms that you get from the state to scan them and then convert them to PDF and manipulate them that way. So you'll find one in most city halls.
Okay, just that was that stood out to me initially. I had also just a couple of little, it looks like maybe typos. Let's see here, this would be page. Ed, I just want to let you know I had you in my mind as I was reading through this and finding typos, and I was fully counting on you to point them out instead of making me do it. But
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Let's see here. Second page, top under D, So, adding, what did I say here? Sorry, that's not the one I wanted to say. All right. Under M, maintain an accurate record of the sewer utility numbers of customers, customer types, fixed charges, cubic fee. I feel like that's probably meant to be cubic feet.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And then under T, oh, sorry. Oh, hold on here. X on the page 3 would be towards the end of the sentences, or after the comments, developer evaluation. I think it should be evaluation. Is that?
I think it actually may be
Is it valuation? I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Okay, I just wasn't sure. And then. I think that might have been it. I just had that electric typewriter circled on the back.
But we have upgraded. It's an electric typewriter now.
Yes, instead of.
So that's encouraging.
That's nice. Okay.
You're welcome.
Yes. Does anybody else see any language in here that would? Go ahead, Mayor
I'll
Tom.
ask a little bit about item Y in that list. Serves as liaison to the Hillside Cemetery Association, Columbus Public Library, and Historic Land Preservation Commission in recording financial activity for these non-city held programs. I guess just the word liaison, would it be better to refer to it as a financial liaison or something in that respect? I just didn't want there to be any confusion if they're appointed to that board as liaison.
Yep, that's a good point.
Okay.
And Kim is on the line too if we need to ask, but from our discussions, because they're sort of creatures of the city, we end up having to account for a lot of their finances, and Kim has worked over time to really work with them in a way that makes sense based on their transaction volume to get those reports and that money in and accounted for and then reported back. But yeah, I believe this is strictly in a financial capacity.
It would comport with item J as well.
Any other objections or suggestions from? I just wanted to say I appreciated sort of the end paragraph on page 4, the position description for the city finance director does not constitute an employment agreement between the employer and the employee, and is subject to change by the employer as the needs of the employer and requirements of the job change. I think that's important that we're going to have, we have several new positions here at City Hall, and I think it's important just to kind of put that language in there just so that we have, some flexibility with, responsibilities and how they're delegated and who's going to be doing what, and just when you're changing so many positions at once.
I have no other concerns other than what we've discussed with the job description, and I'm fine with moving this forward if it needs to be approved at the next regular council meeting.
Is there consensus from council in general to move this forward to the next regular meeting for approval?
I think it looks good.
Okay, so we will move that forward to the next regular meeting. We'll move on then to number 7. which is consider and discuss task order number 2020-05, the wastewater treatment facility influent pump replacement. In the packet, the task order is by Ruckert and Milky. I have, who do I have? Is Jason Lisa is going to head this off for us then today? Jason?
Everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So this task order tonight is part of the wastewater capital improvement plan for the city. And one of the projects for 2020 is identified as some of the raw wastewater pump influent pumps. There's 5 of them down there as part of the plant, and 2 of those 5 were replaced in 2011. If you look at kind of the intro to the task order, there is still some reliability and redundancy that there's old pumps operating since kind of the new plant in 1984 was constructed. So the intent was to replace these in stages. That initial stage was replaced in 2011, and these pumps were on the capital plan to replace this year. So the idea here is that these remaining 3 pumps would be replaced with another pump, and ultimately there will be the new pumps are much more efficient and they're larger pumps, and so they'll be operating kind of as a redundancy to the 2 that are there now. So definitely it is an upgrade. The 2 operating pumps, the 3 can operate at peak flow, but you need a backup as a requirement. And so this is a project that's been on the list for a while now. It is kind of coming before you tonight for consideration. Our task order does cover the entire project, so it will be the design, bidding, and construction component of the services, and obviously that includes all of the electrical, mechanical design, and all bidding, and then the preparation of DNR permits for the final approvals through the DNR, and then obviously the construction-related services. So again, that's kind of a high-level overview. If anybody has any questions, I'll try and field them. Again, keep in mind the wastewater side, I'm usually pinch hitting for our team, Dave clearly, so if there are questions that I don't know, I see John's on tonight, or I can get answers and hopefully get them back to you before any other action is taken on this in the future.
Okay, does anybody on council have questions for Jason at this time? Mayor Tom?
I would just ask if, I don't see a cover memo with the task order, but do we know if we have the funding already budgeted for the task order for this project or not?
Is that a question for Kim?
I can speak to that.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
I think if I heard were the dollars actually budgeted for? They are actually part of the replacement funds that we have on hand for the pump and motor replacements for the wastewater plant. So those funds are available to take care of doing this project this year.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody? Ed?
Yes, I have one question, Jason. It says as part of the task order, conduct 1 punch list follow-up inspection. I assume that's pretty standard, but my question comes up, what if you have a recalcitrant vendor that requires more follow-up than 1, somebody to ride herd on them? Would we be paying your firm for additional services, or is it contemplated that between that and project closeout that things would be taken care of within this task order?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do have some time in there, obviously, for the punch list follow-up and also the closeout. We actually have a project very similar to that right now, where we've been kind of going back and forth And we've also been soliciting the staff from Columbus to help reach out and follow up on things with us as well, just for the final closeout, make sure that we're getting all the correct paperwork and stuff submitted. So usually it's just some correspondence type things that have to occur in those situations, Ed, and you know, they aren't big time items. And a lot of times, you know, we just coordinate with staff and we kind of share the responsibilities. If it's something formal that has to be written, we'll take care of it. Or if it's a kind of a follow-up phone call or an email or something, staff a lot of times helps chip in on that too. So most of the time we're following these projects relatively closely through the construction phase. So when we get to the end and do these punch lists, they're usually pretty minimal and the contractors are fully aware of what they need to do. So they usually go pretty quickly. But again, we do have that from time to time. So that's good.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, theoretically, could we be billed for that additional time, or would it behoove us to reword that to conduct necessary punch list follow-up inspections?
Yeah, I think right now, Ed, you know, if you look at the closeout and the punch list follow-up inspections, we have allocated on kind of the attachment, the exhibit that shows the breakdown. There's 18 hours of effort total there. Now remember, we bill these contracts on an hourly basis, so if we don't use it, we don't bill it. But it is there. That seems to be sufficient in my mind for follow-up time. You know, hopefully it's much less than that, but I'm confident that, you know, our task orders should cover in most cases any effort needed, and hopefully we don't use that budget.
Very good. I just was concerned about the word one, and but I think you've allayed my fears. Thank you.
Mayor Tom?
I'll ask one more question that's not necessarily directly associated with the task order, but since we're talking about wastewater treatment plant projects, I know that the resolution that we approved at the earlier meeting tonight for the Huber Screen project, there is a fund that was from the connection for Fall River that was given to the city years ago, and certain criteria need to be met for us to be able to dig into a percentage of that funding to offset some of these projects. And I assume when all these projects are gone through, you look at those, but I'm wondering if something like the pump replacement, if any of that Fall River fund contributes towards a percentage of these projects or not. I just thought I'd ask the question now, since Kim is probably available, just so we're a little bit more aware of how we utilize those funds.
What I understand from the agreement with Fall River is that reimbursement would occur if the project is being borrowed for, and then the engineers would work between each other, Fall Rivers and the cities, to determine the right allocations between Fall River and the city as far as responsibility of the share of the cost of the project. Because these funds are something that we're going to be actually be able to pay with cash, we wouldn't necessarily be borrowing for them. So the Fall River's contribution, it wouldn't come into play unless we were, like I said, borrowing for the project.
Thank you for the clarification on that, Kim. I just wanted to bring that up now for the newer council members. I believe the Huber Screen project they're contributing about 11 or 12% or somewhere in that neighborhood, if that's correct, Kim?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions on item number 7?
I have no additional questions, and I'm fine with moving this forward to the next regular meeting for consideration.
Okay. So we'll move that forward, and we'll move on then to item number 8, just to consider and discuss task order number 2020-06, the West Side Lift Station Generator. I would imagine, Jason, are you wanting to head this off as well?
Yeah, so this task order very similarly is a project that is on the capital plan for the wastewater for 2020. There's been those of you who have been around a little while in the council and staff know that there's been kind of a ongoing effort to upgrade the external lift stations around the city of Columbus. We have several of I want to say we have 9 or 10. I'm not sure the exact number right off the top of my head without looking at the map or the list. But we've been upgrading those lift stations, replacing, and when we do that, we've been installing on-site generators with automatic cutover switches for when the power goes out, they kick in, and when the power restores, they kick back out. Those are either put on or retrofitted. If they're new lift stations, they're added into the construction. If they're old, we've been adding or retrofitting those on. They're natural gas-fed generators. The idea here is that the city does have a mobilized or a trailer-mounted generator, but obviously, multiple lift stations and one generator cause a problem. So this has been one of the things that we've been working on. It also is something that the DNR has been indicating a need to have some reliable backup or redundancy, prevent backup into homes when we do have power failures at these stations and lack of portable generators or the ability to go out and man those portable generators. And so this project is to add a generator to the west side lift station. It's actually down by the Interpack Park that was discussed earlier tonight, and it serves multiple lift stations. There's the commercial, the transit, and then the Hall Road lift station. So there's 3 lift stations upstream of this that are pumping into this location. And so with that being said, this is to retrofit a generator to add a small building next to the existing lift station building, conduct all the hookups with the gas, and go ahead and make all the wire connections for the electrical connections into the existing system. And so this would, again, for engineering wise, this covers our involvement to do the design, both on the structural building and any site requirements to get the wiring and the generator gas feed designed and installed with approvals by the DNR, and then very similarly the bidding and construction related services, similar to what we would normally do, to meet with the contractor and assure that the project is completed and closed out properly. Again, this is a proposal for this year. We look at obviously having construction starting later on in the fall, and then wrapping up probably with final closeout towards the end of the year. So does anybody have any questions related to what's included in the scope or proposal for this generator design?
Mayor Tom?
One question, Jason, on the front page under the specific project data, the last sentence in there states the City Plan Commission would approve the new building and the city would select the exterior colors and textures. Is that already kind of on the agenda for the next Plan Commission meeting, or what is the timeline you're looking at where you would need approval for from the Plan Commission for that?
Yeah, I think typically what we would normally do is have the design a little further in place so we could present it, before we do the final specifications. But it would come somewhere down the road. So assuming that this would be approved, it would probably be in summertime at some point where we'd want to have some approval so we could finish the specification design before we go out to bidding. We just want to make sure, because it is in addition to the existing generator building, that we have something that's approvable and certainly people are aware and have a chance to comment on it from the neighborhood as well.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Is council okay then moving this forward to the next regular meeting? Consensus. Ed?
Alder Johnson, I would just point out, interestingly to me, on this one, there are 2 closeout punch list inspections, for what it's worth, and 1 on the prior one. So
I'll respond to that. I think with this one, the idea here is that we would have an electrical inspection on this separate from the actual building and site connections. So those obviously are going to occur, but there's also, there's the generator startup and some other things going on here. So usually we want to make sure that we have multiple people involved, and that might require 2 meetings or 2 follow-ups.
very good, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Jason. So getting consensus that we're okay moving this to the next regular meeting for approval. Okay. With that, we're going to move on then to number 9 is consider and discuss financing options for Hibbert Street reconstruction project. So for the financing option, I'm thinking we're going to turn to Kyle. Would you like to head off, and then maybe we'll get Kim in there as well?
Yeah, I'll lead off, and then Kim, I think, could contribute, and Brian also from Ellers is here if we have any questions. Essentially, you've obviously been talking about the Hibbert Street project for quite a while, and we're to the point where we need to start putting those steps into place to move forward on the borrowing that will need to happen. And Kim has done a good job of laying out some of the different options. There was some initial talk of a state trust fund loan, and those are there's drawbacks to each of the options. I guess the state trust fund is relatively simple. On the flip side, though, the interest rates aren't as competitive. So there is a lot of information here in the end based on what we need for future budgets and what's going to reduce the impact overall to our debt service as we move into future budget years. The staff are recommending that we go with a general obligation note. The exact interest rates obviously wouldn't be known at this time, but it would be a similar process where we go through with Ellers and establish the time frame and start the process. But there are multiple ways we can do this, so the council should weigh in on if they have preferences on one method over the others.
Anybody want to voice preferences or any questions as you read through the material provided by Ellers? Mike McCabe?
Alderman McCabe, I was just wondering if the general obligation note, that's a fixed interest rate for 10-year repayment?
My understanding is, and Brian can potentially step in too, there's different ways they can set up. Typically, they will have fixed rates associated with certain issues, although they can layer them in there in different maturities at times. So I don't know if that answers the question well enough for you, or if Kim or Brian want to comment.
I can chime in. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you for having me. To answer the question on the interest rates, as it's shown in the materials provided for this meeting, typically when we're issuing public market debt, as you go out through, the timeline or throughout maturities, typically you will see interest rates inclining, and that's only due to because investors on the secondary markets, when you sell this debt to an underwriter, they then sell it to investors. So generally those investors like to see a higher return for holding on to that investment for a longer period of time. So that's why you'll see inclining rate structures. If you issue debt through the state trust fund loan program, you would have a fixed rate, but it does come substantially higher than public market offer debt, such as we're showing here in your packet. So that's kind of how the interest rates work in the various financing mechanisms that we've discussed.
And I'll just add as well that once the issue happens, those are fixed. They won't be moving around based on the interest rate environment.
Right.
Thank you.
McCabe? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Any other questions? So do we have consensus then from council to move this forward to the next regular meeting?
I guess I would
Mayor Tom?
ask what our timeline is and when we need to make a commitment. Obviously, as we did tonight, we have to work with Ellers to have a resolution for the borrowing. I'm quite surprised and also relieved to see that the recommendation is for a 10-year note for such a large project, which I think is very good for us. One thing that I just briefly mentioned to Kyle last week while we were talking about just debt in general and borrowing is if we're going to go the route of general obligation borrowing, and if the rates are favorable, I had mentioned to Kyle that the city has made a few purchases in the last couple of years. One was the Countryside Ford property for the expansion of a potential fire station, and also the annex building. If those are fixed rate borrowing episodes and we're paying 4.5% interest, I would like to see at least a model thrown in front of us to say if we were to refinance those inside of this GO borrowing, there could be a large potential savings there. I'm just assuming that, but I'd like to see those numbers, because if we're going to go through the whole process of the bonding, it would be nice to see if there's other potential savings and can reduce our debt levy more long term. So just wanted to bring that up now since we're talking about borrowing. I'm not assuming anything, but being able to do such a large project with a 10-year note, I think is favorable, and having good rates is also great news. So, and then I would just leave it up to Kyle to say, you know what, we have to establish a timeline for all of this stuff. How aggressive does that need to be, and how much time do we have to look at options, I guess. But I would defer to you.
And so I think there's a couple moving pieces that we're still waiting to finalize. So we do have a little bit of time, but once we kind of lock in on the method, that will help sharpen our focus as we kind of lay out the plan for then pulling the trigger on that when we kind of have everything in order. But I think it does make sense to add, if there's debt that is callable or refinanceable, I think it makes sense to include a couple scenarios, and that may actually give us a little bit more budget relief moving forward as well.
I think given the dollar amount we're looking at for this specific project as a 10-year note, if we were going to include those other things, I think we may need to consider, maybe not a 10-year, maybe a 20 there. But if there's savings over that 20 years, I just want to see that picture before we commit one way or the other. So, thank you.
So we'll move this forward to another future COW meeting is what I'm gathering, or giving Kyle some direction at least that to figure out, I guess, what the timeline needs to be.
I have no opposition to the recommendation that's here right now, but I think if there's a possibility we can realize other savings by refinancing some of that higher interest debt, I'd just like to see that before we commit to it. So if we could at least bring it back to one more committee of the whole for a review, I would appreciate that.
Okay, with that, I guess we are moving on then to number 10, which is just to consider and discuss field use agreements for Columbus Baseball Organization, CBO. Do we have Amy Jo? Amy Jo, can you hear me okay? Could we unmute Amy? Amy Jo? Unmute. Amy Jo,
Good evening.
Oh, good evening.
Yes. Hello.
Hi there. So, we're on number 10, which is the agreement for the Columbus Baseball Organization. Did you want to head that off for us?
Yep, for the CBO and number 11 for the CSA.
Yep, one at a time.
We're on 10. Okay. Yep, just basically before you, it is that time of year where the contract with the CBO is to be renewed.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the contracts have been a two-year contract, but we are asking just for a one-year contract. We are looking at exploring a rate adjustment of player participation fees for the 2021 season. As I stated on the committee of the whole letter, is that we didn't feel it was right to increase it right away. We do want to work with the organization to find a fee that works well for both ends.
Yep. Does anybody have any questions for Amy Jo from council? Mayor Tom?
Don't really have a question for Amy Jo, but just want to point out to new council members in the last few years, we've tried to update these field use agreements. So basically the first page is going to be the same on every field use agreement we have with all the different organizations we work with, including the insurance requirement and all the other things that are listed in there. That's pretty standard, the amount per participant. It's the second page that has the, I guess, more minute details that the city agrees to with each of these organizations that we work with. From time to time, there are organizations that want to work on the fields or line the fields. There's specific requirements that they want, and they volunteer their time to provide those services. Otherwise, the city would normally do that for them. So the second page on each of these agreements, Exhibit A, is I guess what the minor details are for each one of these organizations, just so you recognize that. Otherwise, I don't have any concerns about any of the language in either of the agreements. I think going with a one-year approach at this time right now is probably the smartest thing to do, given that everything's kind of been turned sideways for organized sports, etc. So
I would agree. Okay.
Thank you. Saying that.
And then I guess we're going to keep you here just really quick, Amy Jo, if you have anything in addition to say for the number 11 is consider and discuss field use agreement for Columbus Softball Association. So pretty much really the same uniform contract, just different organization with different agreements on that second page like the mayor was referring to. Anything you would add to that? Just pretty much the
Nothing
same
has
one.
changed. Everything remains the same, just extending it for a 1 year versus a 2 year.
Sure. Okay.
one more question, Amy Jo, it's Mayor Tome here. I just wanted to ask if the language on these two agreements on the second page, is this updated or is this just existing language from the prior agreement with these organizations, or have you communicated with these organizations on those specifics on the Exhibit A page on the agreements?
Everything is pretty much the same. There was some language from the CBO, pretty in-depth with things and changes that they wanted, but I think between Zach and I, it's just basic maintenance, and it really didn't need to be on the contract. They wanted more specifics about language in regards to having all diamonds in Kiwanis Park be designated for CBO, and I guess at this time we didn't feel that we needed to put that on there because the CSA at times does use Kiwanis Park as an overflow. So I guess that just comes down to a scheduling issue. If there's space open, then CSA would use those diamonds. If not, it would just be used for CBO. So I just didn't feel at the time it needed to be put in the contract, at least for this year. We can explore those options in 2021 if things change. And the reason I didn't feel we needed to put in is because CSA numbers are down. They don't have as many players as they have had in the past, so I think Meister Park would be enough field space for their use over it in Meister Park, and CBO should be able to utilize 6 diamonds, and I guess I just didn't feel it needed to be put in a contract, stating that they could be the only ones using it. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you, Amy Jo.
Yep.
Okay. I guess we're okay moving forward with the CBO and the CSA to the next regular meeting, or no concerns from Paul
I guess
Piper?
the only comment I have, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but this agreement is in effect for 2 years, ending 2020.
Oh, so is that did I miss it on the back page?
That's on the Columbus softball and Columbus baseball.
Good catch. I will make the change and send over to Pat before a signature is completed.
Good
Thank
catch.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy Jo. Okay, so with that amended
thank you.
language, thank you, Paul. We will move that forward to the next regular meeting. Thank you, Amy Jo. number 12 here, moving along, is consider and discuss noxious weeds, grass, shrubbery services contract. I have Zach Naven from our Director of Public Works here to chat about that. Hey, Zach.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, so I just wanted to bring this contract forward for you to see again because we had started this discussion. This is a contract in the future. It's something that will just be handled internally between Kyle and myself. Per Paul Johnson, this is not something that would need to come forward to the council, but I thought since we had started this discussion, I would finish it up with you so you know where we're at.
Okay.
So we did put that RFP out for bid. Unfortunately, we did only have 2 parties bid on it. We were expecting 4 to 5, but take what we can get here. And our low bid was with Dwayne's Lawn Care Inc. out of Beaver Dam. Their low bid came in at $60 an hour with a response time of 36 hours. I did complete the reference checks with them. All 3 groups I spoke with had great things to say about them. And I had the contact that I've already had with that individual. The owner of Dwayne's Lawn Care has been very responsive, and I think we're looking ahead at a pretty good working relationship there. The council had asked for information just to kind of see where we were at with other communities and based on past years where those came in at. I did reach out to one of my public works groups in the Madison area. Unfortunately, I only got 1 response, but they were right in that same ballpark at $55 an hour. And to give some perspective on our costs in the past, 2018 our rate was $75 an hour, and 2019 we were at $56.81 an hour. So with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you, Zach. I did have one question. So essentially, if you call upon a resident you give them a 24-hour notice rather, to get these weeds or grass cleaned up, and they don't do that within that 24-hour notice, and you call Dwayne's and he doesn't show up for 36 hours, and what if that customer had then already, or the citizen rather, had taken care of that problem?
Yeah, so just to clarify, our current ordinance gives residents 7 days to mow their lawn after they've been notified. That is something that I've encouraged to be addressed during the ordinance committee review. That and the length of the grass. Currently, you're not out of compliance until your grass is 12 inches in length, and then from that time you have 7 days to address it. And as you can imagine, 7 days after 12 inches after 7 days turns into probably closer to 15. So I would encourage that to be addressed as we continue those ordinance review committee meetings. But to further answer your question there, Katie, we notify the contractor after that time is up. And then in the meantime, the contractor is required to take pictures before and after they do the work. So if they were to get there and the work was already done, then they would not have any proof to show that they were able to complete that work.
Okay, I guess that was my question. Would we still be billed if that citizen had already taken care of that issue? But
understood. No, we would not be billed for that. We don't. I guess I have not experienced it yet where we only have one resident in town that's not in compliance. So generally, when we give them this list, there's going to be a handful of them where they're going to be in town. There is nothing in there that says that if there was only one and they showed up that they could or couldn't bill us for that. I guess maybe Attorney Johnson would have some input on that if we need to clarify that.
I would assume it would probably have to be in the contract I realize this doesn't come up very often, but I would assume it would probably have to be in the bid contract. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, good question.
Here? Paul, did you want to chime in there?
I don't know if I want to chime.
Okay.
What exactly is the question? I heard part of what Zach was saying, and then I didn't hear the last part.
I was just asking if this Dwayne's showed up to mow somebody's grass or take care of the noxious weeds, and it had already been done in the given time of the 7 days, and it's already finished. Do we still then, are we on the hook to pay Dwayne's?
Yeah, that is a good question, and I don't think the contract specifically addresses that. I mean, the way that it's written is he gets paid for the work that he does. My guess is that if he shows up and the work is already done, he's not going to be overly enthused by that, but I don't think that we pay him. I mean, either the contract can be reworded a little bit to address that issue, Zach, or he just isn't going to get paid. I mean, he gets paid for the work that he actually does. The fact that he drives out there right now is, in my mind, is on his neck.
I would agree that.
I would just offer, if I could, Alderman Johnson, that although Dwayne's would be given a 36-hour window, there'd be a lot of incentive to be closer to the first hour than the 36th hour if he's not going to be paid under the current contract. So it may be something that would be self-policed by Dwayne.
All right.
Yeah, that's very true, Ed. I would agree with that.
Thanks, Zach. Any other questions from council? See none? Okay, I'm okay. Thank you, Zach, and thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
We can go ahead and move this forward.
That's
And
Katie.
yes,
I was going to ask because I don't know if there is any action required from.
I was just going to.
Zach mentioned that at the beginning of the conversation, so this is just an update or discussion, Zach, is that correct?
I guess I'd have to let Attorney Johnson clarify that, but it's my understanding that it was just more of an update and the contract does need to be signed. I did put on there for it to be signed by the mayor and city clerk, but it could also just be signed by the city administrator if we wanted to change that up.
I would prefer that if you have time to have the council approve this, at least for the first time. And then in the future, I don't think we would need to do that as long as the terms stay basically the same. But if you've got time to put it on the next agenda, that'd be preferable.
Okay.
That shouldn't be an issue. I don't think we're going to hit 12 inches of anyone's yard in the next 2 weeks.
I don't know.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Paul.
Pessimist, you.
Okay, so then it looks like we've got consensus from council then, and we will go ahead and forward that to the next regular meeting. Okay, so we are moving on here to number 13, which is review alcohol licensing renewal process. I believe this is pretty much due to the COVID-19 impact on a lot of local establishments, and I think Pat, did you want to say something about this item?
Pat wanted me to.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just kidding. She asked me last week. I just wanted to kind of help frame. Pat brought this forward to me a couple weeks ago, and I think she just wanted to get this conversation up early for the council, as early as possible. I guess the last sentence on the memo says the two main issues for your consideration is if the fees should be adjusted and if the inspection process should be altered in any way. I can say from even when I was on the council that we put a lot of work into trying to refine this annual renewal process for these licenses, and that we do have, I think, a pretty streamlined process, even though it's very involved and it's a lot of work for Pat to do. But as you see, there's a review by the finance director for outstanding taxes and assessments, the water and light for outstanding utilities, police, fire, and building inspector for any violations, and the police department does all the background checks. We also receive the notices for liquor distributors for outstanding liquor invoices, and all these reviews are reported back to the clerk once she sends out that information to them. I think what Pat is concerned about is obviously some of these businesses, if they have a restaurant, they're able to do delivery food right now. They're not able to sell alcohol or have patrons in the bar. So one thing that we can consider, and there was actually an article put out today by the League of Municipalities talking about this, is having local municipality reduce those fees since they're not really bringing in any income. So that's part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation with the inspections is really due to the code that we have. I think as a council person going through this, what we were literally trying to do was take the code that was there and apply the code to the process, which in all due respect to anybody prior to me, it wasn't being followed. I do think that we need to try to follow the code to the best of our ability, but given the situation right now, I think what we need to do is come up with some agreements on what part of this process we're willing to kind of waive this year, given the situation. And I think that's the discussion that we need to have, is just make sure the new council members understand the process that's involved annually for these renewals, and what kind of changes we can, or direction we can give to the clerk in this process. Should she be following to the letter what the code says and what prior expectations have been, or whether we're willing to offer some flexibility there. I can tell you one of my big issues with the licensing that has really kind of drawn this into more of a process is by not seeing the licenses for a couple of years, there can be changes that would be suggested by the property owners or the license holders, and without seeing those changes presented, you could essentially be authorizing changes in the premises or where alcohol is bought, sold, or stored without your knowledge. And once you start approving those changes, you cannot take them back. So that's why I think we've tried to expose this and put a little bit more transparency into the process about reviewing these licenses one at a time instead of just as a group. I didn't want to jump on you, Pat, but hopefully I kind of gave an outline to some of the newer council members about how we've approached this in the last couple of years. And Pat, I'll let you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to bring this forward simply because there are bars and restaurants in town that aren't open, and I just want to bring it to everyone's attention if there's any information or any way they want to consider any of the fees. There are minimum fees required for not for beer but for intoxicating liquor, and that that minimum fee is $50. By bringing this forward, I was mainly concerned with, again, the bars that can't be open, the restaurants that cannot be open. There are a couple of things that can be considered, and I just wanted to bring forward as well that I talked to Randy Keene, Chief Keene, and the building inspector, because they do their inspections together, and one of the options that they would consider is the possibility of waiving inspections for this 1 year. They both agree that that would be something that they would be interested in. One idea was to consider inspections by appointment only, starting in May, and really the building inspector would have difficulty coming into town to do that. If they could be scheduled in a couple of days, he could do that. Just coming in randomly when there's an appointment would be difficult for him to do, and it would be costly for us. I did also speak with Paul Johnson regarding this and came up with a couple of different options or scenarios, and he said he would be willing to help out and talk to us tonight. Paul, you there?
I am here, but I'm having a hard time hearing you, Pat.
I guess what we want to look at, Paul, is options on fees and your thoughts of after we talked the other day.
Oh, sure. Concerning the fees, there are some fees that you can drop all the way down to 0. There are some fees that have a minimum of $50, and it's literally a choice for the council, because right now I believe all of your fees for alcohol licenses are all set at the maximum that you are allowed to charge, which under normal is appropriate. But you have some wiggle room in all of these fee areas if you choose to do that. The one thing that we need to remember, at least from a timeline point of view, is that whatever decision you make as far as the fees go, if you're going to be reducing any fees, we also have to amend the ordinance accordingly, because all of your alcohol fees are set up and are part of your alcohol ordinance, and they're probably also listed in the fee schedule someplace too, would be my guess. So we just have to remember to change, make the changes in all the places if you're going to make changes at all.
Just for clarification, Paul, what I'm hearing you say is that we have flexibility to change these, but that it's not as easy as just discretionary, just this year changing that fee because of the situation we have without amending the ordinance. Is that correct?
Right, and the ordinance change is easy. I mean, it's not a complicated thing. It would be basically switching out numbers and then remembering to go back next year, or at least revisiting it next year.
Okay, thank you.
If I could jump in.
Ed Johnson.
Yes, one of the other issues that Pat brought up, Attorney Johnson, was the question of potentially waiving inspections for a year, that the building inspector and Chief Kane proffered that as an option, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. I don't know if you heard Pat mention that portion of it. And then my only caveat, pardon?
Yeah. Pat and I talked quite a bit about that issue the other day, and I think that normally your alcohol license review process starts right about now, and the inspections is one of the central parts of the whole process, and it's also one of the parts that takes the most amount of time, because you've got police, you've got fire, and you've got building inspector that all need to go through all of these properties. With all of the properties, well, not all of them, but a large percentage of the establishments being physically closed right now, that makes it almost impossible for any of the inspectors to just drop in like they normally would do. So one of the things that Pat and I talked about is, and I heard her say, trying to do appointments. If there was a time where police chief, fire chief, and building inspector could all get together and hit everybody up at the same time, well, that would be great, but probably not overly likely. Another option is basically if you're going to have the inspectors do their jobs independently, then everybody's got to open their door 3 times, and they might not want to be at their establishment 3 times just because they have no reason to be there. So that's kind of what that's what the issue is. I don't have a big concern about waiving the inspections for 1 year. I also wouldn't have another suggestion that we talked about was doing the inspections after the fact, once they're open, once the establishments are open, because if there's something that's significantly wrong, a violation of the fire code is a violation of the fire code 12 months a year. It's not necessarily tied to the alcohol license, and a violation of the building code is the same thing. So we use this opportunity now as a little bit of extra leverage on the establishment owners to make sure that they get things up to speed. But if there was a significant violation that was found after the fact, you still have the authority to make them fix it. So you might want to consider just doing that, doing inspections, within 30 days or 60 days of opening up, whatever that means, and not directly tie it to your license granting process this year.
Thank you. Trina, did you have something?
Oh, I don't actually know anything. I've just been trying to go through a similar process for my small business with baking, and was supposed to be inspected the end of March. That obviously fell through. And now it seems like there's a 6-month grace period. At least that's what the inspector I was talking to thought. I'm just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
I guess my comments would be that knowing what we don't know right now is we don't know what the next 14 months is going to look like. So I think a wholesale abandonment of the inspections, I think is just premature, would be my guidance. And I guess secondary to that, to open up a different avenue instead of changing ordinance and changing fee structures. And I think if you look at the different licenses that are out there, some are doing very, very well right now because they are open. Others are doing very poorly because they can't. And so treating all of them equally might be a challenge. One thing that some communities are doing that we might want to consider instead of changing our law is to say the fees stand. However, the city council could entertain economic development grants that would mirror or somehow be attached to the amount you paid in fees for this annual license, and you could make a determination based on the type of business to say, a tavern with this kind of license is going to receive a $200 economic development grant, and we just cut them a check. We don't have to change the law. They still receive the money back, and we also don't set precedent to say that we have to change the law every time there's one of these extenuated circumstances. And it is really what you're trying to accomplish is you're trying to help their business and alleviate some fees. And in that way, that almost more accurately represents what the goodwill you're trying to put out there. So those are my comments.
Question for you then, Kyle. Just curious as to what you would recommend then with the all of the different inspections. Is there a 6-month grace period like Trina was kind of implying, or what?
Yeah, I think some sort of grace period. I think 3 months is probably too little at this point, not knowing how the phasing is going to go. So I think a goal of 6 months is reasonable and would allow us to still make changes depending on how the phases go, and even if we get to, say, October and there's a resurgence and more restrictions come in place, I think you still have that flexibility, but to tell people it's important year over year to have these inspections and they're there for a reason, I think I'd like to adhere to them if we can. And I think there will be a point in time when these businesses are open for regular business, and we should be able to incorporate it like normal, just at a later date.
Thanks, Kyle. I just wanted to chime in really quick. Sorry, I'll get to you, Ed. I think you had a slide on. But going through this in a normal time, when I first got on council last year, it was one of the very first things that was addressed, and that we went through. And I looked at this process, and there were a lot of things that these establishments had to go through, and I was very just intrigued by it. But I think that, to Kyle's point, all of these different inspections that these establishments go through were important. There were several things that were changed last time around that people had to go around and change for safety measures and different things like that. So I think it is important to kind of still acknowledge that this isn't just a free-for-all year, that you don't have to pass any of these inspections, but I like your ideas. So Ed Johnson.
Thank you. One question I would have for Attorney Johnson is whether, let me just back up. One of the things that you alerted us to last year was so-called premises creep. Once you allow an area to expand their footprint, as it were, you have essentially grandfathered that. And I would just want to make sure that any leniency or whatever you want to say on inspections wouldn't grandfather in any form of position creep. premises creep. Other than that, I like your idea of making sure that's not a problem. Just waiving the inspections or whatever you talked about, that a building code inspection is a building code inspection, fire problem is a fire problem, and allowing that to come up later. And I would only caution on the economic development grant. I think you then open it up to other types of businesses looking for assistance from the city, which I personally might counsel you to reduce the fee by whatever is commensurate with what the business interruption might be, but a wholesale rebate of their license, also considering that we use that money in formulating our budget, might open up a can of worms that I want us to worry about unintended consequences. Thank you.
Trina?
Thank you. To piggyback off Johnson, I'm leaning on not reducing the fees. Most of them are so small that I don't think they would be the make or break factor in any business. I think leniency on time will be much more valuable.
Mayor Tom?
Kyle, I like your approach too. I think we want to offer some flexibility here, but when I heard, repealing ordinances, that scares me a little bit, because I just think that's a lot of work we have to go through. I understand that this whole process needs to be formal, and that we can try to give some leniency here. But again, we don't know what we don't know, and that's really hard for me to kind of find a position I'm comfortable in with. I'm not that opposed to waiving fees or some fees if we need to be, or offering flexibility on how those fees are paid, that once they're able to open and operate, that maybe those fees come due within 60 days or 90 days or something like that, to be a little bit more flexible. I think my concern about the building code inspections and the fire inspections aren't necessarily directly associated with a building code violation or a fire code violation. I think it's all of the things that kind of fall between all the different inspections as far as the storage, sale, and consumption. And I think the thing we've really looked at in the last couple of years is detail on the application to say, where are you storing it, where are you selling it, and where are you consuming it, to prevent what Ed had talked about, where you get this outward creep of a premises without knowing it. I would think in our messaging and in our initial contact that comes from the clerk out to these establishments is to say that we're willing to be flexible. However, we don't want to see any change between their license last year and this year as far as their description of premises involving storage, sale, and consumption, and ask them to try to understand why we're doing that. I do still think that there would be probably some need to get the inspections in there if they're open and operating again within a fair amount of time, and we can be flexible on that. But my concern there is again that someone's not in business right now, they open up in 6 months, and all of a sudden they've doubled their square footage where they can sell or consume alcohol, which didn't exist before, and we're not aware of that. So I think we need to work together with the businesses and understand we can offer some flexibility, but also make sure that we're not letting something through the gate that we can't undo after the licenses are approved. So, and I think a lot of it's just going to come down to good communication. I know, Pat, you try to get early information out to these business owners, and you hope that you hear back from them early, and every year there's maybe just a couple that just aren't getting back to you as quickly as possible. I think the Class B license holders are probably who we're most concerned with as far as the loss of business right now, but when it comes to a grocery store, convenience store, gas station, I mean, I don't think that they've been injured at all right now due to the economy. So I don't think there needs to be any adjustment there, but I think the focus is the Class B bar restaurant designation.
I like your point there. I like also when you refer to 60 days of opening if they are closed currently. Would that be something that we would have to amend our ordinance for though as well? I'm curious, Paul, if you could chime in. Paul Johnson.
If I remember correctly, our ordinance doesn't have anything in it about the inspection part of the process. That's been more of a policy-driven situation. So I think that if you adjust that part in any way, that's not something that needs to be changed by ordinance. That's just kind of the internal policy of the city as to how you're handling these applications. And to go back briefly to, when you're talking about changing the ordinance here, you literally are changing out the fee from 500 to X and from 100 to X, and that's all that you're doing. You would not be doing anything substantive, just changing the numbers. So it's really not a major undertaking, and it should be able to be passed in a couple of meetings if you choose to go that route.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Tom?
Attorney Johnson, is there any mechanism that we could use that if we did have to adjust or amend the ordinance for this, that they could automatically just be reset back to the original ordinance after a set amount of time? That if we had to do this, that
you can draft the ordinance this year to be for 1 year only, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we can just add, it'd be similar to a sunset clause that you would put in there and just say this is for the 2021 alcohol licensing season only, and reverts back at the beginning of 2020 at July 1 of 2021. Okay. Yeah, you could certainly do that.
sunset clause is what I was looking for, just something that, to make sure that we don't do this and then not come back and
then forget. Yes.
Correct. Yep. That offers me a little more comfort.
Okay, so what's the direction of the council then? Does everybody like the idea of a sunset clause? Does that make most people comfortable? Leniency period? Mayor Tom?
One more question to the clerk. If we're looking specifically at the Class B bar restaurant license, Pat, what are the current fees for those licenses then? Like for the Class B, it'd be $500 for the intoxicating liquor, and then also they have a beer license, so they pay another $100, or is, okay, so $600. So about $600 annually, or if they had wine on top of that, that would be an addition as well. Or not.
In the case of the person, the bar that has the wine, they have a beer and a wine.
Okay.
So that's $200
Okay.
for them. Most of them are $600
Okay.
with the beer and intoxicating.
Okay.
And then just various fees on top of that. There's publication fees, there's background check fees, so it's not just flat $600. You could look at $700 or $800.
Publication fee is something that we charge to them, or okay.
Yes, it is.
And the background check is something.
Background check fees, that's something, yes.
And also inspection fees is something that we cover on our end though, normally. Like the building inspector, if they have to show up twice, we have to cover that cost, not them.
That's right. And of course, then there's also a tobacco fee. So, if they sell tobacco products, that's also included. And some bars do have a tobacco license. Most of them are the Class A's, which are your grocery store, your gas station, convenience stores.
Okay. I guess maybe if we're trying to make a consensus out of a lot of different things, is maybe finding if the council is in favor of dealing with the Class Bs. I mean, I see that as the classification here that's the most impacted right now, and whether we can kind of focus on the Class B licenses.
Do we have any just Class C restaurants? Or do we have any of those? Okay.
The one restaurant that has wine also has beer.
Okay, so that would be still considered within Class B.
Correct. B and C.
Okay. So I'm for that if there's, most of those establishments are the ones that, like Mayor Tom had mentioned before, the ones that are truly impacted by this, so I'm okay with that. What's the Trina?
Oh, no, so Are we thinking of doing a temporary reduction now? And by how much? 25%, 50%? What are we thinking?
I too sort of have a question, maybe, there's so much information that it's hard just to say, let's move this forward. I think maybe a little more discussion, because I think in our head, there's a lot of different angles going on. So, I mean, it's not like this coronavirus is going away anytime. I think we have time to, so if we move this on to the next one, I'd appreciate that.
When is it typical, when do we typically pass these, or ask for these renewals?
The council would normally see them in June, 2 meetings in June.
Okay. So would we have some time then to kind of process this and bring it back to another COW meeting?
If
the time-
I may offer one more thought.
Yep.
As I'm sitting here, another approach that you could take to this, it kind of goes to what Kyle was saying before. There's a fairly decent chance that by July 1 of 2020, these establishments will be allowed to be opened going forward. And if you wanted to streamline your process considerably, I think you already have it in your ordinance that if somebody applies for a license halfway through a year, you prorate the license fee. And because they've been closed since March 17, you could offer like a rebate from the period of time from March 17 until June 30th, or whenever they actually open, and cut everybody a check for that, and then you don't have to mess around with the fee going forward. That'd be another approach that you could take.
Okay.
I like that approach, and that's based on actual harm, because they're not allowed to be open against their control. So I think there's a lot of sense in that, and also what we're really trying to help people with is what they're in now, which is actually current license year. It has nothing to do with next license year. And if you monkey with next year's license, someone could come in November who wasn't hurt at all by this and take advantage of the artificially low rates and actually increase competition over the people that just barely survived. So I think there's some good logic to that.
I would agree. Okay. So what's the will of the council? Do we want to bring this back then for another COW, or do we feel comfortable then moving this forward to a regular meeting, Mayor Tone?
So, Paul, with your suggestion there, that would not need any amendment to the current ordinance then? Or would it?
I think that's correct. I think the council, I think the council can simply adopt a motion to issue a rebate or whatever fee, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure. I guess I would call it a rebate. And if you wanted to formalize it a little bit more for posterity, you could do a resolution to do that. But I don't think you need to change your ordinance by doing something retroactive.
Okay. What if we have some consensus? Why don't we have Attorney Johnson or someone just draft a resolution that we can bring forward to the next committee of the whole to continue the discussion with? And then also, I think Pat's just looking for some general guidance on when she contacts these people. She's going to try to do it as early as possible, and she will have a better sense once she sends that letter out to the license holders what type of response rate she gets. But I do think we want to try to put some language in there to discourage anybody from changing their footprint on their current license as much as possible.
I think that's a really good idea.
So we can just, I think we should continue the conversation at the next committee of the whole, but have something that we can actually consider taking action on the following meeting, like a resolution.
I'm okay with that. Council, I'm getting a lot of nods. Ian? All right, got a nod, okay. All right, so we're gonna move that forward to the next committee of the whole. Next up is number 14. We are gonna convene to closed session per state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically finance director's salary. There will be no further action taken this evening. We have one other closed session after that. But we will not be coming back on the air because no further action will be taken tonight. Thank you and good night. I'll need a motion and a second to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into the closed session for the reasons stated, and Katie, you did a good job tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second that, both accounts.
All right, I got a motion and a second. We are now in closed session. Oh, Pat, please do the roll call.
Piper Owen,
Here?
Reed, Ryan,
Aye.
Tome,
Aye.
Gray, Johnson,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Motion carries.